Hello, hello. I figured I would go live for a little bit. Mostly because I wanted to watch this video because it comes up with a lot of, based on just the description, so I haven't watched it yet, a lot of topics that I have a lot of knowledge about, and I wanted to watch it and share it with you, so let's do that.
For now, there's a dead body out here.
Okay.
Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
On March 22, 1999, 22-year-old Cynthia Vigil was chained inside a soundproof trailer in Elephant Butte, New Mexico. For 3 days, she was beaten and tortured by David Parker Ray, later known as the Toy Box Killer.
I hate David Parker Ray. I hate him. One of the worst true crime cases I think I've ever looked into. What is really upsetting is that a lot of people think that the reason he was able to operate for as long as he did, despite the horrible things he was doing to people, specifically women that he was kidnapping, is one, he had an accomplice that was his girlfriend, which is even creepier. Who signs up for something like that? But also that he was like allowing people, this is a thought, this is not proven, this is just a theory from the true crime community, that he was like letting other people come over and do stuff with the women that he held hostage, which is gross to think about because they were very isolated where he was. He worked as a forest, like a park ranger, so he was able to do just about anything he wanted because he was very isolated, and he was taking these women from like major cities that were like homeless or different things like that, and then taking them hours away from there to where he was. And he played these really creepy tapes of him like telling them that like there's no hope, they should just submit and give in, and then at the end he had like brainwashed them. Some of them didn't even remember what he had done, and it's wild. It's just wild to watch.
Somehow she broke free, bloody and terrified. Still wearing a metal collar, she ran barefoot down a dirt road until she reached a neighbor's home. "Please help me. I've been held captive," she begged, before the call to 911 exposed one of the darkest cases the FBI had ever seen. And as disturbing as this was,
Oh, I hate that this photo is on the internet. We're going to talk about it later.
it's only the beginning. These are 6 most disturbing videos that terrified the FBI. On March 31st, 2006, the night began like any other. Brian Shaffer, a 27-year-old medical student at Ohio State University, had just finished his spring exams and was looking forward to a week of relaxation. Earlier in the evening, he had dinner with his father. They talked about school, his future, and life after medical training. His father later recalled the conversation as warm and full of optimism, unaware it would be the last meal they would ever share. Later that night, Ryan decided to celebrate with friends at a popular bar in Columbus, Ohio, known as the Ugly Tuna Saloona. It was a lively spot, located on the 2nd floor of the South Campus Gateway complex. College students, young professionals, and locals filled the bar every weekend,
I think I know
and
this
that
one.
night was no exception. For Brian, it was meant to be a carefree evening to blow off steam. He met up with his friend Clint Florence, and later Meredith Reed, another close friend, joined them. They laughed, drank, and mingled. Brian appeared relaxed and happy, even as the weight of his mother's recent death still lingered over him. But sometime after 2 a.m., what began as a night of celebration turned into one of America's most haunting unsolved disappearances. Surveillance footage shows Brian riding the escalator up with his friends and entering the Ugly Tuna. He looked relaxed, smiling as he blended into the late-night crowd. Later, the same cameras captured him chatting with two women just outside the entrance. He appeared friendly, even flirtatious, not like someone planning to disappear. At exactly 1:57 a.m., the final blurry footage shows Brian stepping into a small alcove near a service door. From that moment on, Brian Shaffer vanished. The cameras kept rolling. They recorded every other patron leaving that bar. Police were able to account for each person except Brian. That chilling detail left investigators shaken. How could a man walk into a bar, brimming with people, under constant video surveillance, and never be seen coming out? Detectives described the tape as haunting because it felt as though Brian had stepped off the frame and into thin air. The Columbus police quickly called in the FBI to help analyze the surveillance. Frame by frame, agents examined the footage, trying to spot a missed movement or a glitch. But after countless reviews, the result was the same. No trace of Brian leaving. This baffling absence gave rise to a wave of theories. Some investigators believe Brian may have slipped out through an emergency exit that led into a construction site. That area was unmonitored by cameras, and if he had wandered through in the dark, it is possible he could have fallen or been injured. But extensive searches of the construction site turned up nothing. Others suggested he never left the bar at all. They considered the possibility that Brian was harmed inside the Ugly Tuna, perhaps during a confrontation, and his body somehow removed without detection. But no staff or patron reported anything suspicious, and a thorough search of the building turned up no evidence. Another
What? So he stepped into an alcove and then he just disappeared? How does a full-grown man disappear? I know that that's why this is like, it's one of those locked room mysteries. I hate those. Because it's always like, who did it? How did they do it? I wonder how intoxicated he was. Because I think I've heard a story about a woman who was very, very intoxicated, like very drunk. And she ended up wandering somehow into like a restricted area and got herself stuck in a giant industrial air conditioning. Like in an area where they would go to service it, but she got stuck in it. So she had to call 911 from inside of it. And they had to come and save her. I wonder if he could have accidentally did something like that. Then again, you guess that they would check all of that, but at the same time, no one thought to look for this girl in that area had it not been for her calling. Because she could have lost her life in there. That's crazy.
The theory suggested that Brian staged his own disappearance. Just weeks earlier, he had lost his mother to cancer, a devastating blow for the young student. Some speculated he simply wanted to escape the pain and start over, but those close to him didn't buy it. Brian had plans. He was supposed to fly to Miami with his girlfriend Alexis that Monday. Friends even believed he intended to propose to her during that trip. The idea of him walking away from his life didn't match the man they knew. Investigators pored over every detail of Brian's life. He was a good student, admired by classmates, and loved by his family. He dreamed of becoming a doctor, yet he was also described as adventurous, with a love for music and an appreciation for the carefree lifestyle of a band musician. Some wondered if he might have left to chase a different dream. But if he did, he left everything behind. Police combed through every possible lead. Search dogs were brought in to scour the bar and surrounding areas. Dumpsters, sewers, and nearby rivers were examined. Detectives tracked his phone, bank accounts, and credit cards. Waiting for activity, there was none. His car remained parked at his apartment, untouched. One figure in the case drew particular attention: Brian's friend Clint Florence. Clint was reportedly the last person to see Brian that night. When police asked him to take a polygraph test, he refused and instead hired a lawyer. That decision fueled years of suspicion. Brian's brother and girlfriend have long believed Clint knows more than he revealed. Still, no evidence has ever tied him to Brian's disappearance. Meredith Reed, the other friend who had joined them, did take a polygraph and passed. Her cooperation only deepened suspicions about Clint.
Okay, but the number one thing you should do in these situations is don't talk to police. They are trying to jam you up. Never talk to the police. Get a lawyer, say nothing. It's the best way to protect yourself and others, whether you know something or not. Because even innocent people get put in jail if you talk to the police too often. Don't trust them. They're never on your side. That's just how it is.
Who has maintained silence to this day. Theories kept spiraling. Some investigators considered whether his case was linked to the so-called smiley face killer theory, a string of mysterious drownings of young men across the Midwest, many of whom were last seen leaving bars. The pattern seemed eerily similar, but again, no solid connection was ever proven.
But the thing is technically, he didn't leave the bar. That's the thing. He wasn't seen going out of any of the exits, right? So technically he didn't leave the bar. So the smiley face guy found him in the alcove he walked into? I think I would have to just see the layout or something, but I'm wondering if he just didn't get stuck in something and then pass because he was a little drunk. That happens sometimes, unfortunately.
And unlike those victims, Brian's body was never found in water. His family never gave up hope. His father, Randy, tirelessly searched, speaking to the press, organizing searches, and pleading for information. He held on to the belief that Brian might still be alive somewhere. Tragedy struck again in 2008, when Randy died in a freak accident. A windstorm knocked a tree onto him while he worked outside his home. With his death, Brian's brother Derek was left as the only surviving immediate family member still searching for answers. The FBI's involvement brought cutting-edge analysis. They reviewed surveillance footage for glitches or blind spots. They interviewed bar staff, customers, and construction workers. They tested theories of abduction, foul play, and voluntary disappearance. Every avenue led to the same conclusion: no answers. There were also strange internet rumors. Some claimed Brian had been spotted in different countries, from the Virgin Islands to Sweden. None of these sightings were confirmed. Others speculated he might have been lured into human trafficking, though authorities found no evidence. The case also exposed the limitations of surveillance systems. The cameras at the Ugly Tuna were outdated, grainy, and poorly positioned. They covered the escalator entrance, but left blind spots around emergency exits and stairwells. To this day, some investigators believe Brian slipped through one of those blind spots. For Alexis, his girlfriend, the disappearance was devastating. She called his phone repeatedly in the weeks after, clinging to hope. At one point, she said the calls rang before going to voicemail, suggesting the phone might have been powered on. Investigators traced it to a cell tower near Columbus, but no further signal was ever detected. Over the years, private investigators, internet sleuths, and journalists have dissected every second of footage. They have speculated about body language, potential disguises, and even whether Brian could have slipped out dressed as someone else. None of these theories have ever been substantiated. One haunting detail that continues to echo is Brian's final words to his father at dinner. Randy remembered Brian telling him, "Life is short, Dad. You have to live it to the fullest." Many have interpreted that as a reflection of his grief and outlook after losing his mother.
I really don't like that all the options were he ran away, he wanted to go, none of them are. Yeah, what if he was just drunk and got hurt? Happens all the time. A young man got drunk in the UK, wandered down a street, and he was so drunk he couldn't find his way home. So he climbed into a dumpster to sleep. It was trash day the next day, and he got dumped into the truck from the dumpster and crushed to death. These are things that happen. Just because he was an adult doesn't mean that he didn't have an accident, that he didn't get himself into somewhere that he couldn't get out of because he was impaired. Sometimes the answer is something like that, And the fact that they didn't even think that, they're like, he just slipped away and left. The likelihood that he got hurt and that his phone got stolen are not surprising, and would be an easier option than he ran away from his life because his mom passed. As somebody who loves their mom, I've never wanted to run away from my life. I can tell you that right now. So it just kind of sounds like bullshit. I'm not him. I don't know. I really think he was trying to live his life to the fullest, and running away from everyone you love and your surviving family members isn't going to help that. So, I don't know.
But some also see it as a possible clue that he was contemplating a major change. In the nearly 2 decades since his disappearance, Brian's case has remained open. Each anniversary brings renewed appeals from police and family. The ugly Tuna Saluna eventually closed, but the memory of that night still haunts Columbus. The image of Brian walking into the bar, smiling and carefree, and never walking out, is one of the most chilling pieces of footage investigators have ever reviewed. For the FBI, the case of Brian Shaffer highlights the fragility of human presence. A young man, in the prime of his life, surrounded by friends, cameras, and lights, can still vanish without leaving a trace. It raises questions not only about what happened that night, but also about the limits of our understanding of human behavior, chance, and tragedy. Today, Brian Shaffer remains listed as missing. His brother continues to hope, clinging to the belief that one day the truth will emerge. For many, the haunting mystery of Brian Shaffer is a reminder that even in a world full of technology and surveillance, people can still disappear in plain sight, leaving behind only questions, grief, and a silence that grows heavier with each passing year. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. 5. Faith Hedgepeth. Faith Danielle Hedgepeth was just 19 years old, a bright and ambitious student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She belonged to the Haliwa-Saponi Native American tribe and had already made her community proud by earning the prestigious Gates Millennium Scholarship, an award that promised to cover her education from undergraduate through graduate school. Her dream was to become the first in her family to graduate from college, and she hoped to use her degree to become a pediatrician or a teacher, someone who could give back to her community and inspire.
And now she's missing or dead. Jesus.
The next generation. Friends described her as bubbly, intelligent, and full of life. She had an infectious laugh, a strong sense of empathy,
Girl has cool
and
hair.
the kind of energy that lifted the mood of anyone around her. But in the early hours of September 7th, 2012, Faith's promising life was cut short in one of the most disturbing crimes Chapel Hill had ever seen. That Thursday night started like many others. Faith and her roommate, Karina Rosario, attended a sorority event and later stopped at the campus library. Around midnight, the two young women decided to head to The Thrill, a popular nightclub close to campus where students gathered to unwind and dance. Security footage from the club shows them entering just after 12:30 a.m. Faith appeared carefree, smiling and dancing, enjoying the music and the company of friends. These images would become chilling in hindsight, because they marked her last recorded moments alive. At 2:06 a.m., the cameras caught Faith and Rosario leaving the club together. By 3 a.m., they were back at their apartment in the Hawthorne, at the View complex. Not long after they returned, Rosario said she left again, later telling police that she went to a friend's place to stay the rest of the night. Faith was left alone in the apartment, presumably asleep, but sometime between 3:30 and 4:30 a.m., something horrific took place. By 11 a.m., Rosario returned with another friend, Marisol Rangel. What they discovered inside was a nightmare. Faith was found lying in her bedroom, partially nude, wrapped in a quilt. Her head had been brutally beaten, with blood splattered across the walls and floor. Near her body, investigators found an empty rum bottle that they believe was the murder weapon. But another item disturbed investigators even more: a takeout bag. with a handwritten note scrawled in ink. The message read, "I'm not stupid. Bitch. Jealous." It looked rushed, written in a hurried and unstable hand. Handwriting experts suggested the writing could have been deliberately disguised, either to mask the identity of the writer or to serve as a red herring meant to mislead police. The first audio evidence released to the public was the chilling 911 call Rosario made upon discovering Faith. Her voice trembled as she told the dispatcher, "I just walked into my apartment and my friend's unconscious. There's blood everywhere."
You need to check and see, is she breathing?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, listen to me.
There's blood everywhere.
There's what?
There's blood everywhere.
What unsettled investigators was not only the gruesome discovery, but also the details of the call itself. Rosario never once mentioned Faith's name, referring to her only as "my friend." When urged to check whether Faith was still breathing, Rosario refused, saying she could not bring herself to touch her.
I don't know. I don't want to touch her, but
Listen to me.
There are a lot of people who don't want to touch dead bodies, though. Like, that's not that shocking. Sometimes they just don't want to. It happens a lot. It is a big indicator of something weird sometimes. But if somebody is brutalized, like, you can see it. You know what I'm talking about? Like, if somebody's like half flattened, I don't know that I would be able to check for a pulse. I wouldn't want to know that they were still alive and suffering like that, for one. And for two, I'm weird. But at the same time, it is a big indicator of weird shit.
Is she breathing?
I don't know.
You need to check.
Reporters and investigators later described the call as odd, even haunting, noting the hesitancy in her tone and the lack of urgency in her responses. From the very beginning, evidence pointed toward a sexual assault. DNA samples were recovered from the scene, and with help from the FBI, investigators tested dozens of men connected to Faith's social circle. One of the first names was Rosario's ex-boyfriend, Eric.
Whoever was collecting that blood sample was just ruining it. I hope that they know. I'm glad it was stock footage, because that was awful collection technique.
Ticoy Jones. Jones had a history of aggression and had allegedly threatened Faith before. He was considered a strong suspect, but his DNA did not match. Neither did the DNA of anyone else initially tested. The case stalled, and with no arrest, suspicion spread through the campus and community. Adding to the mystery was a disturbing voicemail that surfaced months later, recorded from Faith's phone around 1:23 a.m. on the night of her murder. Experts believe it may have been a pocket dial that accidentally captured part of a conversation. Some analysts claim they heard Faith's voice crying for help, another female voice saying, "I think she's dying," and a man responding coldly, "Do it anyway." Although sound experts debated the clarity of the audio, the very possibility that it recorded Faith's final moments horrified her family and investigators.
Oh,
As the
God.
years passed, the Chapel Hill Police and FBI released new information, hoping to generate leads. In 2016, they revealed a composite sketch generated from the DNA profile of the unknown suspect. The technology, known as Parabon Snapshot, predicted the suspect's likely physical features, including skin tone, eye color, and hair color. This gave the public a visual target for the first time, but still no arrest followed. While the investigation dragged on, journalists and true crime shows began exploring the case. Questions swirled around Rosario's account of that night. Why had she left Faith alone so late? Why did her 911 call sound so hesitant? Investigators publicly stated she was not considered a suspect, but many online sleuths remained unconvinced. The years ticked by, and Faith's case remained cold. Her family grew increasingly frustrated. Her father, Roland, often said that he knew his daughter's spirit would never rest until the truth came out. For the Hollywood tribe, Faith's death was not just a tragedy, it was a wound to the entire community that had celebrated her achievements and placed their hopes in her. Finally, In September 2021, 9 long years after her murder, investigators got their breakthrough. During a DUI arrest, DNA collected from a man named Miguel Salguero Olivares matched the DNA found at Faith's apartment. His palm print was also confirmed on the rum bottle. He was charged with first-degree murder, rape, and sexual assault. For the first time, there was a name and a face tied to Faith's murder. Miguel was not a well-known figure in Faith's circle, and his connection to her remains unclear. Prosecutors have not publicly revealed whether the attack was planned or opportunistic, nor why the bizarre note was left behind. Even with his arrest, many questions remain unanswered. The haunting evidence from Faith's case has made it one of the most disturbing the FBI ever assisted with. The chilling 911 call, the frantic note, the mysterious voicemail, and the years of silence all painted a picture of a case that felt both deeply personal and terrifyingly random. For Faith's loved ones, the arrest brought some relief, but not closure. Her family continues to seek answers about why she was targeted. Was this the work of someone close to her, or was it the random act of a dangerous stranger? The trial of Salguero Olivares may one day bring clarity, but as of now, the mystery still lingers. Faith's father, Roland, once said, "We have faith the truth will come out." And though DNA evidence finally pointed to a suspect, the disturbing details surrounding that night remain etched in memory. Faith Hedgepeth's case is a reminder of how violence can strike even the brightest lives, leaving behind.
It is really good to know that they actually found her killer, because after so long, and the fact that she is Native, a lot of Native women go missing, unfortunately. They are missing and exploited and trafficked all the time, and at an alarming rate, like a lot higher than any other minority. And it's really sad, but unfortunately a lot of these happen either on or near reservations where they don't have like the police power behind it, or police from surrounding like towns and things don't put a lot of effort into it. It's sad, but it's true. It's what they do. So the fact that her killer was found and that at least they got answers is good to know, but it is still so sad. It's so sad the way that Native Americans in this country are treated is just horrific, and it doesn't get better. They don't try to make it better either. They try to make it harder on them, unfortunately. So I just wanted to point out that I'm very glad that they found her killer, that they put effort into finding out who did this, this poor girl.
And not just grief, but questions that echo for years. 4. Kendrick Johnson. On January 11th, 2013, students at Lone High School in Valdosta, Georgia, stumbled upon a scene that would haunt investigators for years.
Come to Lowndes High School now. There's a dead body out here.
Okay, where at, sir?
Lowndes High School in the old gym.
Inside the school gymnasium, rolled up tightly inside a vertical wrestling mat, was the lifeless body of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson. His feet were sticking out.
I'm glad that they blurred this. This case has always bothered me because me and this kid are the same age. He would be 30 this year. I'm 30. This case has stuck with me for so long, and it took so many crazy twists and turns. I have a theory I will share with you after, as this goes, but let's just listen to the twists and turns that this case took, because it was wild. And I know that they're going to talk about the footage, and the footage, or lack thereof, has always pissed me off.
From the top of the mat, his body positioned head down, as if he had been swallowed by the canvas itself. The discovery was so unusual that even seasoned investigators were left unsettled, wondering how a teenager could possibly have ended up in such a position.
So you'll see here, like this. So, since we're here, I'll just go ahead and share what I think happened. Because I feel like it wasn't investigated properly, but it doesn't really matter. The cause of death is positional asphyxiation, right? Which means that because of the position he was in, he couldn't move. The thing is in there, looking at this, he had a 2-inch mark on the back of his neck. And so what I have always thought happened, because he had been having some trouble with some other kids, and I think that somebody hurt him. I do. I don't think that his death was the outcome that they thought was they were going to get out of it when they hurt him. And I don't know who it was. I don't know who did it. I have no idea. But these mats, him and the other kids who couldn't, like, I guess afford a locker, you had to like rent a locker, they would hide their stuff in there. So like shoes and things like that, and he did basketball and everything. So his shoes were down in the mat, and for gym, they had taken them from lying down to sitting up, so his shoes had fallen down. So one was like wedged and the one was at the bottom. So he took off his other shoes, his regular shoes, to grab his basketball shoes and change shoes, right? Say shoes again. And so he grabs his shoes and he takes off his other shoes. He climbs to the top. He reaches down, he grabs one shoe, tosses it over. He then leans back down to grab the other, or try to grab the other. When he does that, somebody comes up and hits him with, they said that there were weights in the gym, like for, gym class and stuff. I think somebody took one of those weights and hit him. And when they did, they paralyzed him. Since he's now paralyzed at what is essentially the top of his spine, his body goes limp, right? He now can't breathe on his own. He can't move. But this person who hit him thinks that they have just knocked him out, right? So they just kind of lead him down into the thing. He's already bent over, his head and probably shoulders are already in the mat. So he just kind of slips down into it. One arm was pressed under his body like this, and one arm was above, reaching for his shoe. And because of the positioning, one of his shoes was found on top of, because when you're positional like that, you'll start to get this bubbly substance with blood that'll come up out of the mouth. The shoe was on his fingers and it pressed up against the side, and he slowly drug it forward with him. He did not reach the bottom of the mat. So that stuff comes out of his mouth and it drips down, and then the shoe eventually does fall on top of it. Because of the pressure, because this mat was so small and compressed, he couldn't take a full breath anyway, but he's suffocating upside down in this mat. He can't get himself out. He can't move. He can't take a breath. He can't call out for help. And he passed away like that. And the only reason I think somebody else did this to him is because, as you saw in that photo before, which I'm not going to pull back up because I am disturbed that it is out on the internet anyway, the shoes that he took off, somebody had picked up and thrown down into the mat on top of him. So his shoes were dropped down on his body. They did not see the other shoe that he had taken out of there, so it was just left. But his 2 shoes were on him. That's what I think happened to him. I think somebody unintentionally paralyzed him and he died as a result of that. That's what I think happened. I don't investigate cases. This is just a theory about how it happened, but in everyone I've talked to, they said that it sounds most likely, but I don't know. So if you have any thoughts, you should just leave them in the comments, because I'm going to post this on YouTube. So
Authorities were quick to declare the death an accident. Their explanation was that Kendrick had dropped a pair of sneakers into the rolled mat, attempted to climb inside to retrieve them, and suffocated after becoming trapped. They called it a case of positional asphyxia, a freak accident that happened in a place where young people were supposed to be safe. But from the very beginning, his family refused to believe this. His mother and father stood before cameras, often wearing shirts with the words "Kendrick Johnson didn't roll himself up into no mat." To them, this was not an accident. This was murder. They pointed out that Kendrick was an athlete, a strong and coordinated teenager who would never have willingly put himself into such a position for shoes. His father, Kenneth Johnson, once said bluntly, "My son was murdered and someone knows what happened." What made the case even more disturbing was the surveillance footage investigators reviewed. There was no video showing Kendrick actually climbing into the mats, because the school's CCTV cameras were not positioned to cover that specific area. The only footage available was of Kendrick entering the gym. That moment, grainy and ordinary, was the last time he was ever seen alive on camera.
this is why for some reason, a lot of people think that he was rolled into the mat. I don't think that. I think that the mat was already standing and then he slipped down into it. And I think the best way to do that was if his entire body was relaxed. And if you were slipping down into something like that, it would be hard to relax because it would feel like a tight hug for your whole body. Because I think his shoulders were pretty wide. And they said it was a very narrow opening, about 12 inches. He didn't get rolled up. I don't think that's what happened. He entered in from one end and got stuck. But the only way he could have done that is if his body was relaxed enough to do that. And that's where I think the paralysis comes in. Because his muscles didn't tense up, his body didn't tense up, it didn't try to stay out of that area. And not only that, but they had a basketball game and everything that night, which is he was supposed to be helping with. I don't know if it was a basketball game or practice, but he was supposed to be helping with that. And he ended up not being able to and dying.
The following morning, life went on as if nothing had happened. Students attended classes, sitting casually on the bleachers in the same gym where Kendrick's body was hidden only feet away. For many, that surveillance footage became haunting in itself. It offered no sign of struggle, no confrontation, no clue. Just an ordinary teenager walking into a gym, followed by a silence that has never been broken. The case drew national attention almost immediately. Civil rights leaders, journalists, and activists flocked to Valdosta. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation conducted the first autopsy and concluded it was an accident. But the Johnson family, convinced this was a cover-up, paid for an independent autopsy. That second examination concluded Kendrick had died from blunt force trauma to the neck. A third autopsy, ordered later by the Department of Defense, leaned back toward accidental asphyxia. These conflicting reports only fueled suspicion, making it impossible to reach consensus, and sparking fierce debate across the country. At the heart of the family's suspicion were rumors of a fight involving two brothers at the school who had allegedly clashed with Kendrick in the past. Those rumors spread rapidly online and in the media, especially when it was revealed that the boy's father was an FBI agent. For the Johnson family, this detail was proof that powerful connections were shielding the truth. They filed lawsuits accusing officials of protecting their own, arguing that the investigation had been compromised from the start. Federal investigators eventually conducted their own review, analyzing hours of video, conducting interviews, and even searching homes. But in the end, no charges were ever filed. Then came an even more shocking claim. When Kendrick's body was exhumed for the independent autopsy, his parents said his internal organs were missing and replaced with newspaper.
Yes, that is true. A funeral home had agreed to do his services for free. And a way that you keep costs down when you do a service like that is that you remove the organs and you don't use embalming fluid. They were doing it for free. Embalming fluid is not free and it's not cheap. So they weren't going to use embalming fluid for something they were offering to do free of charge. It is weird, but it is a way that they do some funeral services. It's weird, but it's how it's done, unfortunately. Yeah.
To them, this was not just suspicious, but horrifying. They believed this was evidence tampering, a deliberate attempt to erase proof of how he really died. Officials countered the claim by saying the organs had decomposed and were disposed of during the embalming process, calling the newspaper a standard but outdated practice by the funeral home. But for many watching the case unfold, that explanation only deepened the sense that something sinister had taken place. As the years passed, protests erupted in Valdosta and beyond. Students, community members, and activists marched in the streets, holding signs that demanded justice for Kendrick Johnson. National outlets like CNN and the New York Times covered the story extensively. Celebrities even began to speak out, calling the case symbolic of a much larger problem: the perception that black families could not trust the justice system to protect their children. In 2014, the Johnson family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, seeking $100 million against local officials and school administrators, accusing them of orchestrating a cover-up. That case was later dismissed, with a judge ruling there was no evidence to support the claims. But
I really don't think it was a cover-up. Maybe a case of I don't know, incompetence maybe, but I don't think it was intentional. Is it likely that it was? Hell yeah. We all watched the Karen Reed case. I think we know. But I think what happened to Kendrick, it's more than an accident, and it's tragic because he and I are at the same age. But I think it was because teenagers do shit like this all the time. They make a mistake. Whoever did this was angry enough at him to want to hurt him, but didn't know what they were doing. A lot of teenagers, unfortunately, do that. They don't know their own strength, they don't know what they're doing, and the next thing you know, somebody's dead. So they just made an accident, and now this kid's dead, and they don't know what they're gonna do. So whoever did this, I don't think that they meant for him to die. I think they were trying to hurt him. I really do. Because, as they said, it was blunt force trauma to the neck because of that bruise that they found. I really think that that bruise is from the edge of a weight. And when it paralyzed him, they just kind of slid him down in there. And I think that that's really what happened. But at the same time, he was a young man, and he deserved better than this. And it's not an excuse that somebody did this by accident, but it would explain why. But at the end of the day, you need to come forward. You need to get that off your chest. And they're basically, I mean, it's been so long, they don't think that they're going to get any answers unless somebody confesses on their deathbed. That's literally what they said. And I don't know if they're going to touch on this, but Anonymous did get involved, and they have a 10-minute video that they made talking about this. I don't know if they're going to touch on that. I hope that they do, because I thought it was very important.
Even in defeat, the Johnsons refused to stop fighting. They continued to hold rallies, press conferences, and vigils, keeping Kendrick's name alive in the national conversation. The FBI's involvement brought both hope and frustration. Agents reviewed the case extensively, but in 2016, the Justice Department announced it would not pursue federal charges, citing insufficient evidence. For the Johnson family, it felt like another betrayal, another door closing without answers. They released graphic photographs of Kendrick's body to the public, hoping the images of his injuries would shock the world into action. Those photos went viral, sparking both outrage and debate. In 2021, years after Kendrick's death, the case was officially reopened by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office. Following renewed public pressure, investigators promised to re-examine over 17 boxes of evidence. But months later, the sheriff announced the review found no new information to support homicide. Once again, the family was told it was an accident. Once again, they refused to accept it. Through it all, questions have continued to swirl. If Kendrick climbed into the mat for his shoes, why did no one hear him struggling? Why were there inconsistencies in the surveillance camera time?
And I think that my theory explains why you didn't hear him struggling. Because he was paralyzed, so he couldn't struggle. He couldn't make any noise. He couldn't scream. He couldn't kick. He couldn't wiggle. He couldn't fight. He was paralyzed. That's why this theory always stuck with me.
Timestamps. With some footage reportedly missing, why did none of the autopsies align completely with each other? And why did the case seem to split so sharply between the official narrative and the belief of an entire family? And
I really feel like people focus so much on like race when it came to this case, and because of that, we didn't focus on the fact that these are teenagers. Teenagers do shit all the time and hurt each other all the time, and they do unpredictable shit all the time. It doesn't really matter what their race or gender is. They just do shit that they're not supposed to all the time. So to have this kid get hurt from what somebody thought would be a simple like prank or something funny that he could do, and then this kid died. Well, now he has to hide it. He has to keep his mouth shut. He has to tell no one anything. And because of that, and because of how much the waters were muddied around official and non-official and perceived cover-ups and perceived lies, because of that, it really made it to where the case could never be solved, because no one focused on the facts of this case. They just didn't do that.
their supporters. Former FBI agents have even petitioned the Justice Department to put an end to the speculation, claiming the repeated accusations against law enforcement unfairly cast suspicion over innocent people. But for Kendrick's parents, the fight is about more than suspicion. It is about their son's life, a life they believe was stolen. For the FBI, the Kendrick Johnson case became more than a local tragedy. It became a symbol of distrust between communities and authorities, a puzzle that even with video evidence and multiple autopsies could not be solved to everyone's satisfaction. The CCTV footage was described as chilling, not because of what it showed, but because of what it failed to capture. It left viewers staring at an ordinary moment that led to something inexplicable. Today, the official record still lists Kendrick Johnson's death as an accident, but for his family and many others across the country, the image of a teenager disappearing into a rolled-up wrestling mat is not just disturbing. It is a symbol of unanswered questions, unresolved grief, and a relentless pursuit of justice that has yet to be fulfilled. 3. Missy Bevers. On April 18th, 2016, before dawn, a heavy thunderstorm swept across Midlothian, Texas. The sky cracked with lightning, rain pounded the streets, and wind rattled through the quiet neighborhoods. At 4:18 a.m., 45-year-old fitness instructor Terry Missy Bevers pulled into the parking lot of the Creekside Church of Christ. She was there to prepare for her Camp Gladiator boot camp class, a high-energy program she hosted several times a week. Her students were expected at 5 a.m., but they never got the chance to see her alive. When one of the participants entered the church shortly after 5 a.m., the scene they discovered was horrifying. Missy was lying dead in a hallway. She had suffered multiple puncture wounds to her head and chest. Investigators later confirmed that the injuries were consistent with tools carried by her killer. From the very beginning, there was no doubt this was not an accident. This was targeted, calculated, and brutal. What shocked the public most was the surveillance footage pulled from inside the church. At around 4 a.m., just minutes before Missy arrived, cameras recorded an individual wandering through the halls, dressed in full tactical gear. The outfit included a helmet, gloves, heavy vest, and the word police, boldly displayed across the front. The figure moved calmly and methodically, carrying a hammer and other tools, smashing glass, prying doors open, and pacing through the building as though searching for something. Yet the suspect's gait was peculiar, slow and uneven, almost as if injured or weighed down by the gear. For investigators, this was chilling. They believed they were watching Missy's killer minutes before she was attacked. Police never released footage of Missy's actual confrontation with the suspect. They confirmed only that she entered the church shortly after 4:18 a.m., and while setting up her exercise equipment, she encountered the intruder. Cameras outside the church were not working that night, leaving no record of how the suspect arrived or escaped. Those gaps in surveillance only deepened the mystery. Over time, analysts began to focus on the suspect's unusual walk. Some viewers thought it looked feminine, while others believed it could be a man with a limp. An FBI forensic podiatrist reviewed the footage and concluded that the stride could not be linked conclusively to gender. Even today, the identity of the figure in tactical gear remains unknown. Theories quickly spread across the internet. At first, some suggested burglary, but that theory was dismissed. Nothing was stolen from the church. Missy's purse and iPad were untouched, left in plain sight. The intruder smashed glass and opened doors, but took nothing. Investigators were certain that whoever entered the church was not looking for property. They were there for Missy. Then, another disturbing detail surfaced. Search warrants revealed that Missy had received strange, unwanted messages on LinkedIn in the weeks leading up to her death. Police said the tone of the messages had made her uncomfortable. Some speculated the killer may have stalked her, using online platforms to learn her schedule and possibly tracking her movements with a smartphone. At the same time, suspicion briefly turned inward. Missy's marriage had reportedly been under strain. Investigators examined text messages between her and her husband Brandon, finding evidence of marital difficulties. Brandon, however, had an alibi. He was fishing in Mississippi on the morning of the murder. Police confirmed his whereabouts. Still, rumors lingered that perhaps someone connected to her personal life wanted her dead. Attention then shifted to her father-in-law, Randy. Just days after the murder, Randy brought a blood-stained shirt to a dry cleaner. He explained that the blood came from a dogfight, and forensic testing confirmed it was not human. Yet the timing sparked public speculation, another strange thread in an already bizarre case. Adding to the mystery, investigators discovered footage of a vehicle in a nearby parking lot at around 2 a.m. the same morning. The car, believed to be a 2010 Nissan Altima, circled the lot in unusual patterns. It flashed headlights, parked in secluded areas, and drove away only to return again, Police never identified the driver. Whether it was connected to the murder remains unknown. The investigation grew into one of the most high-profile unsolved cases in Texas. Hundreds of tips poured in. The reward climbed to $150,000. Police interviewed family members, friends, fellow trainers.
What could this woman have been doing? What were the messages? Were they graphic in nature? Were they disturbing? Was it like somebody trying to hit on you? Like, that's weird. But not only that, like, what? I have so many questions about this. But my number one thing is, and one thing I'll never do, I am not going somewhere by myself. Right? Like, this woman went alone to set up for a class and got attacked. I'm not going anywhere alone. I take my husband with me everywhere for a reason. I very rarely go places by myself, and if I do, I am on high alert, right? Like, high alert. I'm watching everybody and everything. And, you know, I'm gonna protect myself. Mostly I'm worried about, because I've hurt my back. I have to walk with a cane, sometimes a walker, to go into stores, and I'm afraid that somebody's gonna see that and be like, she's weak, we can like rob her, right? I'll hit you with my cane, you stay away from me. I have to carry around a weapon.
And even former students. Each lead ended in frustration. Meanwhile, internet sleuths dissected the surveillance footage frame by frame. Online forums debated everything from the suspect's walk to whether the uniform was authentic police gear or a costume. Some claimed the suspect moved like a woman. Others argued it was a man in disguise. A few even believed two people were involved, one acting as a lookout while the other entered the church. But no theory ever fit perfectly. As the years passed, Missy's family spoke publicly about their anguish. Her 3 daughters were left without their mother. Brandon said that the unanswered questions haunted him daily, and that he replayed the footage in his mind, hoping for something he had missed. Missy's friends described her as a vibrant, loving woman who would build her life around fitness and helping others. For them, the idea that someone would stalk and kill her in a church was unthinkable. One of the strangest aspects of the case was the calculated timing. The killer entered during a thunderstorm, when the streets were quiet and the sound of rain masks movement. They walked calmly, as though confident that cameras would not identify them. They carried tools that caused injuries matching Missy's wounds. And yet, despite the precision, they left behind no DNA, no fingerprints, and no trail. By 2019, investigators admitted the case had gone cold. Despite analyzing cell phone records, reviewing digital footprints, and consulting with the FBI, they could not identify the figure in tactical gear. Theories continued to swirl, from a jealous rival in the fitness world, to a scorned lover, to an obsessed stranger who had fixated on Missy after seeing her online. In the years since, the case has appeared in documentaries, crime podcasts, and news specials. Each retelling shows the same haunting footage: a shadowy figure in a helmet and vest, wandering calmly through the halls of a church, minutes before a mother of 3 was brutally murdered. Even law enforcement admits that the video is one of the most chilling pieces of evidence they have ever reviewed.
I wonder, and this is just a thought I just had, were they analyzing it to see if it was their police uniform or a uniform from a surrounding town? Because, like, if it wasn't one of their officers, it could have been from somewhere else. Midlothian, Texas. I don't think it's isolated, is it? I don't know that much about Texas. I live in Kentucky, but just a thought, you know?
It is disturbing not just for what it shows, but for what it hides. Viewers know they are watching a killer, but the face remains concealed. The identity is still a mystery. Today, nearly a decade later, the murder of Missy Bevers remains unsolved. Theories are endless. Was it someone she knew? Was it a stranger driven by obsession? Was it a person in uniform meant to deceive? The answers remain locked away in the shadows of that stormy April morning. For investigators, the image of the suspect roaming the Creekside Church is unforgettable. A silent figure dressed as authority, carrying tools of violence, walking the halls with eerie calm, and for Missy's family, it is a nightmare that never ends. The footage is not just evidence, it is a reminder that somewhere out there, the person responsible for her murder is still free. 2 Phoenix Colden. On December 18th, 2011, 23-year-old Phoenix Colden left her family's home in Spanish Lake, Missouri.
Pretty.
It was around 3 in the afternoon when her father, Lawrence, glanced outside and saw her back the family's black 1998 Chevy Blazer down the driveway. He assumed she was running
It's
to a
red.
store or maybe heading to a friend's house. There was nothing unusual in her behavior, nothing to suggest anything was wrong. Yet that moment would become the last time he ever saw his daughter.
Oh.
She backed out of the driveway, and we never saw her again.
Just over 2 hours later, at exactly 5:27 p.m., Phoenix's SUV was discovered abandoned in East St. Louis, Illinois, a city known for its high crime rate and violent reputation. The vehicle was still running, the keys were in the ignition, and the driver's door was wide open, as if she had simply stepped out and vanished into thin air. Inside the Blazer, police found her glasses and a pair of shoes, but there was no trace of Phoenix herself. The car was hastily towed from the scene, and because she had not yet been reported missing, her family would not even be told about the vehicle's recovery until nearly 2 weeks later. That devastating delay cost the family what they believe were the most critical hours in the search for their daughter.
But we found out where the vehicle was, and the East St. Louis police had the vehicle towed to the impound yard probably 3 hours after she went missing. I understand that in a situation like that, the police should determine who the vehicle belongs to and notify the county where the vehicle is registered so that they can contact the people who own the vehicle.
By the time they learned of the abandoned SUV, any potential witnesses had disappeared, and any immediate leads had already gone cold. For Lawrence and his wife, Goldia, the shock was unbearable. To the outside world, Phoenix appeared to be a young woman with a promising future. She was deeply religious, active in her church, and musically talented. As a child, she had excelled in piano and violin, and as a teenager, she became a junior fencing champion. To her parents, she was the picture of discipline and ambition. But as investigators dug deeper, they discovered a more complicated life hidden beneath that surface image. Contrary to what her parents believed, Phoenix was no longer actively attending her college classes. She had quietly withdrawn without telling them, and her days were not always spent where they thought she was. She had a secret boyfriend, friends her parents had never met, and a social life that existed almost entirely outside of their knowledge. This double life suggested that Phoenix may have been struggling with pressures or secrets that she kept carefully guarded. Her phone records soon revealed even more disturbing details. In the days leading up to her disappearance, she had been in constant contact with one particular man. On December 17th, just one day before she went missing, she spoke to him 10 separate times, including one call that lasted nearly 2 full hours. Then, on December 18th, the day she vanished, another call was placed to him shortly before her SUV was found abandoned. While her mother Goldia has said she does not believe this man directly harmed her daughter, she has admitted that he may have introduced Phoenix to dangerous people or a lifestyle that put her at risk. The family's pain was made worse by the lack of media coverage. They felt invisible, overlooked, and forgotten. They openly wondered whether Phoenix's race played a role in why her story did not make national headlines.
Yes. Sadly, yes.
The way other missing persons cases did. At one point, buttons
so
in
that
their
you don't miss our
desperation,
almost daily
they even
uploads.
fell victim to a
Not
cruel
sure where to
scam.
start from?
A
Click the
so-called
videos that
tipster
appear on your
claimed to know
screen in about
Phoenix's
3
whereabouts.
seconds.
Oh, he's talking over it. Okay.
See you
And
there.
the family spent
I'm
their
out.
savings chasing this false lead, only to discover it was a heartless hoax. More than a decade later, the mystery of Phoenix Colden's disappearance remains as haunting as ever. There have been no confirmed sightings, no bank account activity, and no real leads. Detectives insist that they have exhausted every piece of evidence. For the Coldens, their home no longer feels like a place of comfort. Every room is a reminder of the daughter they raised, a daughter who walked out of the house one afternoon and never returned. The FBI has been
Aw.
consulted, but with no hard evidence or verified trail, the case has stalled. Phoenix Colden's disappearance stands as one of the most chilling unsolved cases in recent years. The story of a young woman who seemed to vanish into thin air in broad daylight, leaving behind only a running car, a trail of unanswered questions, and parents still waiting for the truth. David Parker Ray, the Toy Box Killer. In the quiet community of Elephant Butte, New Mexico, few could have imagined that one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history was hidden in plain sight. David Parker Ray, a soft-spoken state park maintenance worker, seemed ordinary to most who knew him, but behind...
When that woman escaped and she went to the neighbors and they called 911, the police officer who answered said, "Hey, that's David's place. Well, I gotta get up there and see what's going on at David's house." Because they all knew him. He was a park ranger. They knew him. Everyone did. And like, what's crazier is this girl was chained to a bed in the living room and his girlfriend was sitting there hanging out with her while she was chained nude on the bed next to her, waiting for David to get home. The girl ended up, like, I think she found a way to get herself out of the cuffs she was in, and she hit her with a lamp and took off. And she ran naked to the neighbor's house, who called 911 for her. And she had that thing on her neck, and they had to cut it off with like metal shears, and she threw it. Are you going to bed? I love you. Have a good night. See you in the morning.
Behind the walls of a nondescript trailer near Elephant Butte Lake, he had constructed a torture chamber so sinister it would later be called the Toy Box.
Oh, sorry. But when they cut it off, she actually took it and threw it off of her. I think she said to this day, like, she gets weird around chains because of it.
The nightmare came to light on March 22, 1999. That morning, a young woman named Cynthia Vigil Jaramillo, who had been kidnapped in Albuquerque, was dragged into Ray's RV, handcuffed, and threatened at gunpoint. From there, she was taken to his home in Elephant Butte, where she endured 3 days of unimaginable torment. Cynthia would later testify that Ray strapped her to a gynecological chair, shocked her with electricity, and brutally assaulted her with crude instruments. What made the ordeal even more terrifying was the ritual Ray forced upon every victim. Before the torture began, he played a pre-recorded cassette tape in his own monotone voice. On it, he coldly explained exactly what they were about to experience. "Okay, bitch, we both know what you've been brought here for. I'm going to use you for a sex slave, and it's going to be painful as hell. That's the way I want it to be." For many women, hearing those words erased any last shred of hope. Cynthia, however, refused to give up. After 3 days of captivity, she managed to slip free of her restraints. Wearing only a metal collar and covered in blood, she bolted from the trailer and ran down the road until she found help from an elderly couple.
Okay, so they just skidded over the fact that she knocked out the girlfriend, but she knocked her out because the girlfriend was there. Like, his girlfriend and his accomplice in most of these crimes was there. What is crazier, though, is that a lot of the women that he kidnapped, he later released. So, but because of these tapes, they think that a lot of them were hypnotized by it. Like, their brains just kind of blocked it out, and that helped it. It's so weird. It is a very weird case. He also kept detailed journals and logs of every woman and what happened to them. So women who didn't even know that this had happened to them found out through this investigation, which is wild.
Who immediately called 911.
Yes, I'm calling for a young lady that ran into the house saying she'd been raped. She's got a chain on her and everything. Please send someone right away. This lady is naked and everything else. She said they've been holding her for 3 days.
Police stormed Ray's property and discovered the now infamous toy box, a $100,000 chamber of horrors.
Oh my god. Every time I see it, it freaks me out. This must be the front of it because the chair is in the center.
Inside were whips, chains, syringes, clamps, surgical tools, bottles of oil, and custom-made torture devices. The setup was meticulous, like a surgeon's laboratory, but its purpose was pure sadism. Authorities also recovered videotapes showing Ray torturing women, though no bodies were ever found. Investigators believe he may have killed more than 60 victims over the span of decades, dumping their remains in remote areas between New Mexico and Arizona. In a chilling interview, Ray once admitted, "I like the lifestyle. I like bondage and discipline. I was just more flamboyant with it."
This right here is the face of almost every sadist I have ever seen. They are never Mr. Gray. They're never just some rich guy who wants to take care of you and go to the red room every once in a while. No, it's always some freak like this who wants to take all control from you forever. It's never just some nice rich guy. It's always something stupid like this. I hate that. I hate it. I have a lot of friends who are part of the lifestyle, and this is always what the dudes that they bring home look like. It's so devastating.
Than most people. He claimed millions of Americans shared his interests, but his flamboyance was a cover for unspeakable crimes.
His stock footage is
In
wild.
April 2001, Ray was convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault. That July, he accepted a plea deal for additional charges, which carried a sentence of 223 years in prison. He never served much of it. In March 2002, only months into his sentence, Ray died of a fatal heart attack. But the story doesn't end with his death. His girlfriend and accomplice, Cindy Hendy.
Cindy Hendy. I hate this bitch. I hate her. Cindy Hendy. Cindy Hendy is a psychopath, by the way. She's pure psycho.
Who helped lure victims and participated in their abuse, was sentenced to nearly 20 years behind bars. She admitted to using a gun to keep Cynthia from escaping and later testified against Ray. After her release in 2019, Hendy quietly moved to Kent, Washington. When neighbors discovered her presence in 2024, outrage followed. Parents near her street expressed fear that a convicted sex offender tied to one of America's darkest cases was living so close to schools and daycares. Though Ray is gone, the shadow of his crimes lingers. Investigators still believe many of his victims were never found, their fates erased by the desert sands of New Mexico. Cynthia Vigil survived, but her courage only scratches the surface of a case that remains one of the most disturbing examples of sadistic evil the FBI and local police have ever encountered. Even today, the so-called toy box killer forces us to confront a chilling truth. Sometimes, the most terrifying monsters hide in plain sight, blending into everyday life until the moment they strike. And that brings us to the end of today's countdown.
What's even crazier is what Cindy Hendy went through in 2024 is the same thing that Carla Homolka, which is not her current name, from the Ken and Barbie killers also went through, because she basically served her husband up on a platter, when in reality they think that she may have actually been the one to commit the murders, but they had already made the deal with her, so they couldn't go back on it. They now call it the deal with the devil. But Carla got out of jail, she got married, and she had 3 children. She was very active in their school, dropping them off at school until families in the area found out who she was. And they said, absolutely not. We do not want her on school grounds. Her husband and her killed her teenage sister and kidnapped and killed 2 other teenagers. We do not want her around our children. So she was not allowed to pick up her kids or drop them off. When she was pregnant, she was she got onto like mommy blogs online, and they were like trading stuff back and forth, like things that mothers need, you know, how moms help each other out, basically. Until one day somebody posted in the group, one of these people is not who they say they are. And that is how these women in this mommy group found out that Carla Homolka was part of that group. And they were horrified because she had their addresses. Like, she had been to their home. Some of them. And it's like, how do you just continue on about your life after you've done something so horrific? How do you rationalize in your head, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to have a bunch of kids and then be really upset when people don't want me to be at school around their kids after what I've done. After what I've done. I don't understand the mentality to think that you can just have a normal life after that. Her and Carla both deserve the isolation. They deserve the attack. They deserve the way that people treat them, because they are not good people. They're just not. You have proven to be and proven that you will participate in the darkest and most sadistic and sickening things that a human being could ever do to somebody. And you want to be upset when people don't want you around. I will never understand that mentality, because if I committed a crime like that, I would expect to be ostracized from the world. What kind of audacity do you find, sold in bulk, to behave that way? I will never understand. Because they are disturbing, and it is disturbing, and it doesn't get better. They were horrific people, and they still are. Just because you're a little older doesn't mean anything. Like, Carla was like 17 when she met her husband and got married. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, she was young or something like that. It's like, no, she wasn't. She was a sadistic monster from the moment she met him. Right? Like, she met him, and it was just kind of like two halves of a fucked up pie coming together, basically. And it's the same with Cindy, Hendy, and David Parker Ray. They're all disturbing monsters who would prove that time and time again, human beings can do the most fucked up shit to each other, but they are also like the darkest, most depraved human beings alive. They prove the depths of what you can do to another person. It's just disturbing on so many levels. And they pretend like it's okay. And it's not. It's really not. But anyway, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put this on YouTube. So find it there. Yeah, that's all I have to say, because I'm annoyed. I hate all of these people. They really deserve just the worst things to happen to them. And learning about women being part of these horrific crimes, it really sickens me to no end. To really just no end. But that's all I got to say for today. Thank you.